I'm Andrew. I'm the lead writer on Blades of Light and Shadow, and today I'll be answering your questions. What was your inspiration to make Blades? So Blades is a book I've dreamed about making for a very long time. Pretty much from the beginning of Pixelary, I wanted to make a book like this. That epic fantasy RPG, making a party and recruiting your allies, gathering gear, traveling, fighting monsters, all that stuff. And I think what I really wanted with it was a book that didn't just feel like, oh, it's a fantasy novel in choices. Like a real RPG with all of the elements that you associate with that and all the things people love about fantasy games. Definitely the most ambitious, sweeping, big project Choices has ever made. It was so heartening and wonderful to see how many of you loved it and how devoted and passionate you were towards it. What character from Blades was the most challenging to write? I think the answer is actually Aaron, because it was really tricky to have that balance of where he's so sweet and likable and charming, but then with enough hints of the darkness within that the big villain twist reveal landed and didn't feel totally arbitrary. I've always felt with twists like that if 10% of the players guessed it and 90% didn't, then that's exactly what I want. Because if no one guessed it, that means it was too arbitrary. And if everyone guessed it, that means, well, it didn't work. And I think we really hit that balance with Aaron. And it took a lot of revision. I know in the first version he was much more like, just kind of like a sad schlub. And I know Maya flagged a lot and was like, can he be more likable and charming? And it was really fun trying to figure out this character who was written almost like an LI with enough hints and levels that he could ultimately really surprise you with his turn. What is the funniest typo you've written? It's not a typo per se, but Threep was going to have like a really gruff, like we literally called it a Danny DeVito voice, where he's gonna be like, hey man, what are you doing over there? Huh? Get out of my way, I'm a talking cat. And I originally really liked this idea, and thankfully the rest of the Brainstorm team was like, what if he wasn't Danny DeVito, but like a charming little British cat? And I'm very, very happy with where we ended up. I think he's a much more bearable character long term. But I do think about the gruff, cigar-smoking Threep that could have been. And what was the greatest inspiration behind the best love interest, Nia Ilarius? Nia's the best. Nia is, I think in every Choices book I've worked on, a few of the characters really end up being like the heart of the book. And this is Nia's book. She's the inciting incident, she's the climactic incident, and her arc and storyline is so central to what Blades 1 is about. I think she's just I love writing a character with an arc like that, where, where she starts and where she ends are so different, and you can see so much growth and so much, like, as she rejects the systems she was indoctrinated in, as she questions herself, and as she finds her own place and her own voice. It's one of my favorite arcs to write and work on, and it was so fun. And I think with Blades 2, her journey of, well, I'm not the church, so who am I? You're gonna love, and we have some really exciting stuff planned for her. Why is Tyril so afraid of geese? I think you're asking the wrong question. What you should be asking is, why aren't you afraid of geese? What does Tyril know that you don't? Tell us a bit about Blades 2. We're working on it. We're working hard on it, and I think it's going to be amazing. I've always felt with a sequel that you want to be bigger and more epic and more awesome, and everything people loved about the first book just crank up even more in the sequel. And I think we're going to do that with Blades 2. It's going to be a bigger, wilder, even more exciting adventure. Of course, you'll see all the characters you love again. They're all going to be back. The party's back. It's another grand adventure for the gang. But you'll see some new villains. You'll see some new locations, new items, new skills, new party members, new love interests, and some twists, especially early on, that I think are just going to blow everyone away. I cannot wait to see the fan reactions, because I picture a lot of like, what? Kind of stuff. So I think you guys are going to love it, and I can't wait to share it with you.
Hi guys, I'm Maya. I'm a writer on Blades, and I'm going to answer some of your questions today. Which characters were the hardest to write? Out of the core cast, at least, I didn't have a hard time writing any of them. and that's not a brag, I promise. I came into the project pretty late. I wasn't part of the original team that brainstormed the book or came up with the characters or anything. So, you know, by the time I was getting chapters to work on, everything existed already. My hands had no part in any of that. Their voices were already so incredibly vivid, and that's a testament to how strongly, you know, the brainstorming team was able to come up with these character voices and making it so clear how they would interact with each other, and like any two or more characters, you know, what would they argue over, what would they agree over, what would banter feel like between them. So, you know, it was extremely vivid by the time it came to me and I started writing. So yeah, I can honestly say, instead of having a hard time with any of them, it felt very natural. What was the greatest inspiration behind writing your favorite characters? I compared Tyril to Zuko then. That is one of my favorite character archetypes. I love the characters that start out seeming really like angry and angsty and grumpy and mean, but like you peel back the layers of the onion and you find out that they're actually just like socially awkward, and they tell really lame jokes, and they are really happy to have friends but don't really know how to show it. And I think that's something that's so delightful about Tyril as you get to know him better. Another character that I absolutely adored writing is Nia, and she reminds me a lot of Aster from The Elementalists. They have this positive and sunny disposition, and the way they look at the world is like, even if there's like awful things happening or sad things happening, they always find the delight in everything. I think that's so important to have in like a group of friends, have that one person who is gonna really help cheer everyone up and remind you what the good things are in a situation. And I loved that about Aster back in The Elementalists, and I adored being able to write such a, you know, uplifting character once again. What is the funniest typo you've ever written? The first one I feel like is a rite of passage as a Blades writer, which is you must typo Tyril's name at least half a dozen times. In the beginning it was mostly like switching the I and the Y around, but there were several times where I typed Tyrip for some reason, and it always made me think of turnip. The other one, this one gave me a heck of a time at the very early chapters of the book. Because I had just written on The Elementalists, I had such a hard time getting Cade's name right. And even just then I had to be like, okay, which one is it? And I would literally like typo the name, and then I'd be sitting at my desk for like a minute straight like, okay, Kane was in The Elementalists, but Cade is in Blades. You know, after the first 3 chapters I was okay, but in the beginning there I was just having a really hard time. Does Threep have a family? And of course he does. It's you. And that's such a central point, central core element of Blades, the found family you've made along the way. You recruit these, you know, wonderful teammates one by one, and each of them comes in with different motives, different goals, different personalities towards you. But, you know, as you go through this harrowing and at times heartwarming adventure together, you know, they open up to you, you open up to them, you form this really incredibly strong bond that by the end of the book it's like, how can I like say bye to these people? And Threep is one of those. Thank you so much for sending them in. Thank you for playing the book. I'm really glad you've enjoyed it, and you know, glad you're still thinking about it after this time. Please look forward to book 2, and in the meanwhile, stay safe and stay healthy and take care of yourself. The end.
Hello everyone, my name is Daniel Chamberlain. I'm a technical producer at Pixelberry. Happy to talk about Blades, loved working on that project, and happy to answer your questions. What was your inspiration to make Blades? Working on The Elementalists prior to Blades was hugely informative for the way that we went about constructing how that game worked. Spells in Elementalists really transfer over to the skills in Blades. You unlock them throughout the book, and that feels super good, as well as how we display them visually with the little spell little animation and then the skill animation. We really wanted to make it feel like whenever you use one of these abilities that you've worked hard to unlock, that you feel really good about using that. What goes behind the creative process of creating the stunning art in Blades? It's a hugely collaborative process, and it's a tough balance between focusing on the fine details and the overall design. But a few stories is with the skill icons and the skill screen that we took a long time trying to make sure we got that right, because we knew that the skill icons were going to show up in a lot of different contexts for your screen, for the choice menus, for the animations in games. We had to make sure these were readable without any text. What was the most complicated thing you needed to solve? XP balance was a really new one for us. We had a lot of spreadsheets trying to math it all out, and our QA team did a great job of making sure that every skill felt useful and that your XP felt like it was coming at a good rate throughout the book, and that you were leveling up fairly often. Will the map be expanded? Will the XP and skills be carried on? Of course, in book 2 there's going to be all sorts of new places you can explore, really offer a new dimension to the world that you've known so far, be able to see it in a new light. Especially going to make sure that your skills you unlocked and the weapons you unlocked from book 1 feel like they matter in book 2 and that they carry over, and that you'll be able to unlock all sorts of new stuff as well, skills, weapons, and so on. We don't want this to feel like a reset, that you're going to be going back to book 2 right at the start like you were. We want this to feel like the next step of your character's journey, and like you're growing in new and exciting ways. Funniest typo? The Deadwood was originally called the Dreadwood, but we made a mistake with the map screen art, and that went out to players in Chapter 1, and we called it the Deadwood. But then when the writers were looking at Chapter 7, they come across this and they realize, oh no, for all of Chapter 7 we called this the Dreadwood, but the map screen calls it the Deadwood. So we just decided to change everything for the book that later on mentioned its writing to be the Deadwood. Thank you all for playing Blades, for listening to this AMA, for your questions. I just want to say that it was a tremendous pleasure from all of us to have worked on Blades and made something that really resonated with players.
Hi everyone, my name is Stella and I'm the art producer for Blades of Light and Shadow. I want to ask about my favorite one, Tyril. To the art team and writing team, how did you create him? What did you think when you were designing his art? In regards to creating him, it took a lot of rounds of concepting and working with our internal art lead, Danielle, to make sure that his particular demeanor and even chosen palette for his visual look really matched with what the writers wanted for the story. And when we were designing his art, I think the main questions in my head were, is he attractive enough? Is he appealing enough? Will our players be happy with how he turned out? And there's a lot of doubts, I think, in the beginning, just because Blades includes such a variety of non-human characters that had to be seen with a slightly different eye compared to some of our standard romances. Where do you find inspiration for the beautiful places, for the blue elves, and even for the orcs? The characters, the settings, did you already have them in your head, or were they born suddenly? For all the places and characters, we definitely didn't have it all fleshed out in our heads, and it involved a lot of collaboration between writing and art. Our art lead, Danielle, was so helpful in brainstorming and sort of creating curated lists of what she think might help for their particular story point. She also contributed a lot of good concept art based off of her preferences in the beginning, which was great. The scenes and destinations, it actually kind of helped to look at real places, you know, places in Europe, places in Asia, just to sort of find something that felt like it would stylistically fit the tone of the book. And a lot of times it did end up being a lot of extended scrolling through a lot of pages to sort of just find something that seemed like it clicked. I think it was really hard to go in and just expect to find exactly what we needed, you know, or something that would fit exactly from the very beginning. So it definitely took a lot of time.
Hello, my name is Danielle, and I was the art lead for Blades. How many initial concepts and sketches did you guys create for the monsters, different races, main crew, and how did you ultimately decide which ones to go with out of all your ideas? I had already known what the races and the characters were going to be based on the writing. It was a matter of getting to have each one feel correctly. There were quite a few steps of getting the humans, the orcs, and the elves to feel a little bit unified in their respective groups. As for the main characters, I had a lot of fun finding ways to represent them based on the tone that I had read them to be. It was very important for me to design them on the basis on how the characters would pick their clothing, because they have their own voice and they have their own personality. For example, Mal is a rogue and he is an impulsive and gruff character. He's got more asymmetry than any of the other characters because you have to think that he's making his decisions on the spot and things aren't really always planned. One of my favorite things that as a personal touch I gave him was a little scar on his eyebrow because I wanted to give him some history of the troubles that he may have encountered. That kind of added a little bit more to his character. Nia was someone I loved to work with. Her designs were so beautiful and so elegant, and once I knew what her voice was going to be, it was important to keep all those design elements of her character to be consistent. So hers is a lot of symmetrical, very gold and glittery to kind of showcase her innocence and her purity of her character. Tyril went through some changes, but we knew we wanted him to be that brooding character, but with a soft heart. His elegant designs were still evocative of his hometown because he's still part of that world. That doesn't ever leave him. And it's part of his character, it's part of his history. The color palette is just to kind of put a little bit more of his unique situation. What goes behind the creative process of creating the stunning art in Blades? I had reread the story of Blades multiple times before I had even looked up anything visually. The story is very important in establishing the tone. Understanding what words create certain emotion and feeling is something that would help inform visuals. A lot of it is being able to be consistent with your own motifs. Being able to keep that consistency throughout the story was something that made the designs feel very unified. Humans had earthy colors and warm hues, so you would see those colors in their clothing, in their architecture, and generally their environment. But it was not only earthy colors, there was also royal humans that were given more royal colors like blues and purples with a bit more on the saturated side. And those who were in touch with the light magic, those colors were represented as white and gold. The elves were also white and gold, but that was to supplement their history of very powerful magic. The white and golds was to complement the other elite colors that they had, like the champagne colors and the light blues, to kind of give them that elegance and finesse. The orcs were a little bit tricky. We knew we wanted them to be seafaring, so there was a lot of research on historical pirate clothing and Viking clothing, and it was so I could capture their warrior tribe group. The goal was to give them the read of pirates first, since that was their tone, it was in their voice, it was how they represented themselves through their actions. But the functional aesthetics were inspired by the Vikings. Before I go, I really want to thank the fans for providing such positivity from reading this book, and for me personally, that's very rewarding and quite a fulfilling thing to have on my end. Seeing that you guys are very pleased with the art and responding very well to it is something I could be very thankful for, and I couldn't have asked for a better team to work with, and I'm very glad that you guys enjoyed Blades. Hope to see you guys soon.